My name is Anshul, and this is Sinjan. We're both the co-founders of Proffer. You've probably seen the logo on all the posters. We can tell you about ourselves and about Proffer over the next few days. Especially in the workshops that happen tomorrow, you'll learn a lot more about it. But fundamentally, Proffer is a protocol for global reputation. You heard Sriram talk about the importance of reputation on networks and accruing that reputation over time. And how do we build a decentralized store of that reputation that's not tamperable? And there's a lot more to it, but we're building a search engine that works on expert networks, particularly useful for countries like India. That's what Proffer is. All right, so let's get started with telling you about the hackathon piece. As you know, today was all about the summit, and tomorrow, or actually right now, we're starting the hackathon, and we're continuing till Monday, 11:59 p.m. You can feel free to stay up all night if you want to, but you don't have to. And the goal of this session here is to tell you about the details. The agenda, can everyone see the slides? We will post this deck online on Slack as well as on our website immediately after this, so you can also access it there. The agenda is going to be motivation, why we're doing this hackathon, challenge problems. You've heard a few from our representatives here from Niti Aayog as well as from IBM, from Zeppe, from Axel. So you have a few ideas now. We'd like to focus them into 3 categories. And by no means are you restricted to those categories, but we want, for those of you that are new to this space and want some direction, we wanted to give that to you. We'll also talk about dev tools. Just to get a lay of the land from our side, how many of you have coded on blockchain before? Okay, good. No, we're excited to see a decent number that have. For everyone else, it's not impossible. You can get started very easily because there's a lot of people out there that have been working hard to create development tools that you can use, and we'll be going through those right now. Then we'll talk about what you're going to submit by 11:59 p.m. and how you're going to submit that, followed by the criteria you will be evaluated on by our panel of judges. And we'll end with prizes, a schedule where we talk about what we cover in each workshop, and of course, how you can ask questions if we are not in this room together. We're very active on Slack. You can feel free to ask us questions there. All right, so I'll get started and then I'll pass it on to Sinchan. How many of you know what this is? Sinchan, can I borrow the mic from you? I'm going to walk around as we do this. Yeah, what is it? Yeah, it's a graph I'm sure a lot of you know well. A lot of the questions addressed to Sandeep were about Bitcoin, about Zeppe. You guys know this graph even when the lights are... Can you guys dim the lights, please? We're going to have some slides with some important information. The one on that side as well as this side. So yes, this is Bitcoin. And in the last 1 year, it's grown 900%, some crazy amount, and it continues to surprise us. What about this? Anyone know what this is? Slightly more challenging. Any guesses? Yeah. ICO what? Money raised from ICOs? Yeah. In fact, it is the top 10 ICOs according to one particular source, CoinSchedule, and the figures, I think, are backdated to a prior exchange rate, so don't try to compare the numbers. We're putting this here to tell you that this is not what the hackathon is about. You guys have read about Bitcoin a lot. That was probably the first thing that excited you to come here in the first place. Maybe you can learn something, make some money. Learn about how Bitcoin works, invest. ICOs, you've heard, maybe you have friends working on it. I see on LinkedIn a lot of people at the high school level, the college level in India, they put themselves as ICO advisors. Very young people. Everyone's an ICO advisor these days. It's a very hyped up topic. And we put this here because we want to tell you that's not what this hackathon is about. There's been a lot of focus, and we think that focus on purely the currency use case is misincentivizing smart people such as yourselves to focus on just the currency use cases when that is merely one application. Whether it's the first or not, doesn't matter, but that's only one application. And we, as you heard yourself from the panel we had, there's a lot that you can do with blockchain, and that's what we want to talk about. So the theme for this hackathon is to go beyond the bubble and think about if there's a bubble and it pops, what will the world be working on the blockchain, and to start working on that now. And if you choose to do that, you will be well positioned when the time comes to build that infrastructure layer and to grow with that layer. These are the early days of this world, and we want you to take part in those early days. All right, Sinchan, do you want to talk about some of the challenge problems in this social good space here?
Yeah, Thank you, Anshul. Hey guys. So yeah, it's exciting to hear so many different perspectives from government, industry, investors, and exchanges out there. And so these are our set of challenge problems for this hackathon. The first one is starting off with the finance side that we just talked about right now, and seeing, hey, not just how do we just make more money, but rather how do we use finance for social good. So peer-to-peer lending is one of them. Crowdfunding public goods. So a public good can even be something like cleaning up the streets in India. How can you crowdfund that so that you're getting the right people to work on it and making sure that once, let's say 100 people from a community have put in money to make something happen, how do you make sure that the right people get paid for it automatically and they don't if something goes wrong? So enforcing contracts in a way, but doing it for social good. And so that's finance. Then we go on to crowdsourcing. So you'll see crowdsourcing is something that's very interesting on blockchains because you can get a lot of independent parties, oftentimes without identity, so that they're anonymous, and they can give you information. And so Proffer itself works on this and is a big piece of this. And so we wanted to explore things in that sense of like, okay, monetize Q&A. How can you reward people? So maybe build Quora or something of that sorts, but make sure that people get rewarded with, let's say, cryptocurrency automatically for what they have said. You can do polling. We mentioned voting, or someone in the audience said voting very early on. And so there's a bunch of these, everything from job matching. So we got a hint of a job problem earlier today from the Niti Aayog people. And that's another thing of like, you can actually implement ways to not only track whether someone's doing a job right now or not, but also help people find a job. And that could be a crowdsourced with job like rewards. So one example is people get huge referral fees for referring a good person to a job. What if you could automate that on a blockchain so that, hey, I referred someone, let me get that referral fee. And then we go on to the big one that we've been talking about a lot today, which is enterprise and government infrastructure, specifically India Chain, which we just heard about. So this one's a big one, and on our website, we've linked to a bunch of papers that describe previous attempts on this on a blockchain, and we want you guys to try it out. It's definitely challenging, but I think it's something that can really take blockchain use cases to the next level. And it's going to be really exciting. So everything from land registration, which we heard about, that can help us a ton. Supply chain also has come up, as has employer and university certificates. So all of these things, like, you're not going to have to maybe build a fully fleshed product, but writing some smart contracts that give you a sense of, hey, this is an interesting use case of a blockchain, and this is potentially how we can implement it on a certain type of blockchain. And so next up, we're actually going to talk about what are practical ways to build all of these things out in this weekend.
Let me introduce Sinjan to you, by the way, properly, because we haven't yet. So Sinjan and we met in undergrad at MIT. And, oh, this is on too here. I can have my own. So both of us are computer science grads from MIT. We met there. We started working on a lot of projects together, and that continued for many years. Sinjan, coincidentally, was most recently at Axel Partners, and you've heard from Axel, as an entrepreneur in residence, and has been working on a lot of products there. I've been approaching blockchain from a different space. I come from the ed tech space, and my particular interest was initially decentralized education. How can you incentivize tutors to match with tutees and solve this big problem that we see in India with tutoring monopolies and a lot of friction in that space? But anyways, we came at this together and decided that blockchain is a very interesting way to create a set of incentives, as you heard from Sriram, to be able to solve a set of problems. And Proffer is now the protocol that resulted from that covers a number of use cases we can tell you more about later, but that's a brief background about both of us. Go ahead, Sinjan.
Yeah, 100%. And that is really what excites us. How do you get those rewards going in the right way? And this example flow actually touches upon that, and that crowdsourced public goods example in the challenge problem #1 that we had. And so this kind of will show you on a high level, like we've been talking about these grand problems, but what does this mean to be actually implemented on a blockchain in terms of what technologies to use. So this is a pretty simple flow where we're saying that, hey, a community, let's say of 100 people, let's do a simpler scenario of like, let's say we want a concert and we want to crowdfund some fancy star to come and do this concert, and only if they come and do the concert do we pay them out. And so we start off by getting the community to pay some money into the blockchain. And we can do this through ZebPay or something else. And then the service provider, in this scenario, a concert singer, they come and say, hey, I did the concert. They do a fantastic job. It's an amazing performance. Then we need verifiers. So this could be the community or outside concert goers who come in and say that, hey, the service provider is correct. The singer did indeed come and perform. And once this happened, the blockchain can automatically pay out the service provider. And so this is just a very simple scenario for a concert, but this can be applied to businesses and a lot of different scenarios. And so how does this play out on a tech stack? And so we want to introduce like what is on-chain versus on-chain, off-chain. So on-chain is basically what are the things that happen on the blockchain itself. So that includes getting the money and storing it until the task is complete in this example. Then we go on to registering what someone says. So here we have the service provider writing to the blockchain saying that, hey, I've completed. And then we have the verifiers also writing that they have completed. And the final part is that the blockchain pays out to the service provider some money. And so everything that happens on the bottom is off-chain. And you have to use JavaScript, mobile apps, web apps, and a lot of other things to make that part happen. And everything on the on-chain part is the smart contracts you've been hearing about. And different blockchains will use different languages to help you write these smart contracts. But they're essentially contracts that can happen in association with every transaction on a blockchain. And tomorrow morning, we're going to be going through a workshop and helping you see end-to-end how to write a smart contract on Ethereum. And we're also going to be going into some of the other dev tools that are available here. So in terms of that on-chain part, in this hackathon, you're going to have a couple of main tools. One is Ethereum, and the other one is Hyperledger. Both are blockchains, and one is more of a private permission blockchain, which is Hyperledger, and Ethereum is fully public. And so Truffle is going to be the main tool you use to compile and basically deploy your contracts onto basically a test net, as they call it. And on the off-chain side for Ethereum, you're going to have Toshi from Coinbase, which is a very simple way to get started, especially if you're not familiar with this space. Toshi is a platform on which you can write chatbots, which are full applications that can do a lot of these challenge problems. And it's actually built on top of the Ethereum blockchain. So you can actually transact Ethereum coins. You can send Ether tokens, basically, back and forth really easily. And so it's really easy to prototype a blockchain use case on top of this platform. So we expect a lot of people to be using it, and we're going to have a workshop on it tomorrow as well. Web3 is a piece of this, where if you want to write a web app, so Toshi is purely a mobile app platform, so it runs on iOS and Android. For websites that you want to build, web3.js is your main companion, where you can actually directly call functions on a smart contract using that. And it also comes from the Ethereum Foundation, and it helps you build this out really easily, and we'll touch upon that tomorrow as well. The other side of this is Hyperledger, and we're going to have the similar split there, where the Fabric SDK is for the smart contracts, and for web apps and mobile apps, you can use the Fabric client SDKs, and we're going to have stuff on that tomorrow as well from IBM. So yeah, this one actually kind of, to give you a hint of what kinds of things we're going to start seeing from Toshi specifically, we have an example of what it looks like. And so these are examples from Proffer, where here on the first one we have Proffer EDU, which is specifically that education use case of how do you get a tutor to be matched to a student so that when the tutor gives the right answer, they get paid out instantly. And so you could build that on Toshi really easily. The other one is Proffer Jobs. That goes into the recruiting use case where, hey, I want to find a job. Let's crowdsource that question of whether this candidate is a good fit for a job or not. And even here, we see that a lot of payment scenarios and a lot of things happen, but in the framework of some kind of a social application. And so this is something we're going to help you guys build tomorrow.
Sinjin, can I ask the audience a question here?
Sure, sure.
How many of you guys have used Facebook Messenger? Do you know now there's M and goes by different names, but the assistant that pops up buttons at the bottom? What you're seeing here, and you'll see it clear in the high-res pictures and the slides we upload, but Toshi is a messaging platform. Think of it as a Facebook Messenger with built-in integration with Ethereum. So every account on this messenger platform has an Ether wallet, and you can code the buttons at the bottom. So it's very much like the Facebook Messenger SDK, where you can code the options, you can code the conversation flow, and use an Ethereum backend that is just given to you for free. So for those of you that don't want to write smart contracts and just want to get a very early stage intro into blockchain development, Toshi can be a really great way. It's a messenger platform, conversational interface. You code it in JavaScript. You get to use Ethereum on the back end for financial incentives.
Yep. And so, yeah, that kind of comes into this, which is for the first couple of use cases, specifically finance and crowdsourcing, we want you guys to be using either Toshi for the chatbots, much simpler, or if you want to write directly to smart contracts, you're going to use Web3. And so both of these can work well with Solidity and Golang for Hyperledger. On the third challenge problem side, we have a specific constraint there. It's going to be harder for you guys to showcase what this looks like using Toshi, because at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is more about the infrastructure. And so for that, we want you guys to write smart contracts, either in Solidity or in Golang for Hyperledger. And that'll really help us see that, okay, on a low level, what does it mean to do property land registry on a blockchain? How would you register it? Which transactions would you have? What would you write onto this ledger so that it becomes a great record of who owns what? You know, the details of that is really what we care about, and so this is going to be good to know.
Cool. I'll take back over here. So by Monday, 11:59 p.m., what you will submit if you participate in this hackathon is, first of all, a 2-minute screencast. This is not a selfie video. This is a screencast of either your conversational app, your Toshi app that shows us the conversation, or it's a screencast of you browsing your own GitHub repository, showing us your smart contract code, maybe showing us in your console compiling and running and showing that when you call into the smart contract, it does what you said it would. So it's a screencast with a voiceover. This is the fastest way for judges to see what you did and to get impressed by your team. Because I'm almost certain they're going to look at the short descriptions of problem solution and the video before they dive in and go through the entire code. Okay? So the video is your chance to make a good first impression. And you know, it's not about the video quality, but sometimes the quality matters. So just this is your way to make a story about what you've built, but a technical one. Second, you're going to send us, so by the way, the first one, that's not uploading a video. You're going to upload your video on YouTube on your end. You can either make it a public video or an unlisted video. You'll take the link of that YouTube video and give the link to us so that we can give it to the judges. The second is a link to your GitHub repository. So the way you share your code, we don't need a zip file. We need a GitHub repo where you have uploaded your code, structured as you want it to be structured, and a README, which is a very default feature of a GitHub repository, but use a README to explain to whoever lands on your GitHub page what's going on in this application. Because you're only allowed to write in the third and fourth deliverables, 1 paragraph for problem, 1 paragraph for solution, the README is your chance to talk about architecture. So let's say you tackle a really difficult problem. All the guys working on chatbots with Ethereum, they might impress someone more with a video, but your README is your chance to stand out. So let's say we take a problem like AI and and crypto economics, for example. Like, how do we incentivize people to train machine learning models without giving away data? We want people to be able to train, like a client, to be able to use their own data to train a machine learning model, and the centralized platform never sees that model. That's a very difficult problem to solve. If you work on something like that, the README is where you explain your architecture. And I would stress that use it well, be concise, but also have architecture diagrams. Feel free to share what you're trying to do so that even if you don't finish, you get credit for what you attempted to solve. Okay, and the last is just you'll type in 1 paragraph problem, 1 paragraph solution. Let's go next. This is easy. We'll be changing the button that right now says sign up to submit your projects on the website. So you will click on that, it'll take you to a similar form, and that's where you provide this. Again, the deadline, India time, 11:59 p.m. on Monday. All right, judging criteria. Most of this stuff should be very obvious. You can imagine why we need this. The first one is it's the use of blockchain technology. So if you submit something that doesn't use Hyperledger or Ethereum and doesn't touch any blockchain at all, that's defeating the purpose of this hackathon. We want you to attempt it, even if it may be challenging. And so the first one measures whether you used blockchain and how successfully you used it. Quality of technical implementation is what I was describing to you. How sophisticated was the problem you were trying to solve, architecturally speaking, and to what extent did you actually make it happen? So again, a Toshi app might be easier to do, and there's some more sophisticated architectures. But again, it's better to pick something that's easier to do and to do it well than to just pick a massive problem and not make any progress on it for the hackathon purposes. But for your own intellectual stimulation, you should feel free to do whatever. The third one is the relevance. So not everything needs a blockchain. And we're not here to sell you blockchain for everything. This is not the solution to the world's problems. I think it can be a solution to a lot of problems. This third one measures whether your problem that you picked actually needs a blockchain. And then fourth, we have what I was describing to you, the clarity of your documentation, the written one on a GitHub README, as well as the clarity of the video submission. And finally, the size of the problem. Now, those of you that pick the massive problem, this is where you might get some points. If you pick a very challenging one that impacts a lot of lives, then you get points on this one. Because the world needs smart people to work on challenging problems. Okay. Prizes. You've probably seen this, that's why you're here. The first one is a $5,000 ETH prize, that's Ethereum. That's from Coinbase, and Toshi is the product. It's the product we told you about, made by Coinbase. And so they're going to give 5,000 ETH, and you know if that goes up a day after you get it, then you're a very happy person. So they're going to give you Ethereum. Sinchen and I, we actually participated in a Coinbase hackathon in June, and we won that hackathon. So they gave us a 10,000 ETH prize, and I can tell you it's super exciting to get an ETH prize. So it's fun. It comes instantly, and you get to see the value of frictionless exchange of financial incentives on these cryptocurrencies. The second one is $5,000 in AWS credits. And again, these are not, it's not a second prize, third prize, fourth prize. This is just listed in that order, in the order of amount. But again, this is AWS credits. There's a $4,000 Microsoft prize, $3,000 Axel prize, and there's a blockchain internship, of course, contingent on an interview in which you perform well, but likely that you will only be invited to this if you demonstrated that you are qualified. And so this will be an internship with IBM Research in an India office working on Hyperledger, and therefore it's restricted to someone who works on Hyperledger during the hackathon. The first one, similarly, is restricted to teams that use Toshi. All the other prizes in the middle, anyone can win. Any questions about this? All right. Let's go through schedule, and we're going to upload this, but what I want you guys to take away, we're going to highlight 4 things here. These are the technical workshops, and since you can't read this, let me tell you what these are. The first one is about Toshi. So Toshi is the messenger bot we talked about with built-in Ethereum integration. That's from 1 to 2 p.m. tomorrow in this room. You'll start from scratch, and you'll build the Toshi app. The second one, from 2:30 to 3:30, after lunch, is going to be a workshop on smart contract development for Ethereum. So the first one, though she will not touch smart contracts. We'll just show you how to build a conversational app that has built-in Ethereum integration purely for financial exchange of Ether. The second one is where you learn how to build smart contracts for Ethereum using Truffle, the development framework we told you about. Third one is a workshop led by 2 members of the IBM research team here in Delhi. Both of them are Hyperledger researchers and developers. They'll be teaching you about how to get started with the Hyperledger, including a real demo. And the fourth one is an advanced workshop. It's going to be on the topic that we touched upon briefly on the panel. Someone talked about data privacy. I think it was you in the red shirt. But we're going to touch on, it'll be partly conceptual, partly hands-on, but this is about how do you build scalable architectures on the blockchain? Where do you store the data? Whether it's going to be Aadhaar numbers or whether it's going to be health record data, you can't just store it on the blockchain because you might have gotten the sense from listening to Garrett talk. Garrett talked about fees, and there are fees associated with storing data on the blockchain that are insanely expensive. So putting someone's health record on a blockchain is not necessarily an affordable option. You need to find ways to store that data in a traditional storage device and verify it on the blockchain using a hash or some other thing. And that's what we'll talk about in this. And we'll use Proffer as a case study of how we store reputation data for millions of users off the chain, but verified on chain. So that's what that advanced workshop's about. That's the fourth one. So 4 technical workshops tomorrow. There will be a panel in the middle about opportunities. We'll dive deeper into identity, into healthcare, into different things, and how blockchain can make a difference. That'll be similar to the panel we had today. Any questions about schedule for Saturday? This is only Saturday. So our first technical workshop tomorrow is 1 to 2. I'd also like to highlight that 12:30 to 1, we will be having a talk from Ajay Bhushan Pandey. That is the CEO of Aadhaar. We have heard a lot about Aadhaar, and the CEO of Aadhaar has, he's quite excited to actually participate in an event of this sort, which is looking at how Aadhaar can enable even more use cases. So you'll get to hear from him. 12:30 to 1, and 1 to 2 is the first technical workshop. All the events will be in this room. All the meals will be right outside. Okay, next one. Yeah, you want to add on?
Yeah, I was going to add on one thing. And so the thing with, as the CEO of Aadhaar is coming as well, and going back to that last set of challenge problems, when you guys tackle those infrastructure challenge problems that we saw right there, I'll go back to it. These, yeah. So one thing is, keep in mind all the themes that you've heard about today, everything from privacy to trust to identity. And what happens if you bring all of those onto a blockchain like India Chain? What happens if you actually have Aadhaar accessible as you're building out these use cases? And what happens if you don't? And so, your submission, you can actually assume that you have Aadhaar built into the blockchain, or you have some privacy mechanism with which you can store data privately. And just note that down in your README or your solution paragraph that you submit. And it's just a way for us to understand that, hey, as we figure out how to build India Chain, what kinds of use cases are enabled with each of those things? Specifically, identity, if you can do Aadhaar authentication and have that mapped to, let's say, an Ethereum address. So 1 Aadhaar identity to 1 Ethereum address. What does that enable? So every one of these things is going to be interesting. And either in the workshops or in our office hours, feel free to ask us more about this to get a clearer sense of how you can mock that into a smart contract.
Now, speaking of office hours, we talked about workshops on Saturday. Sunday and Monday are going to be work time, and even Saturday's work time. You don't have to come to the workshops if you don't want to. It's only if you want to learn. And even after the workshops, in between workshops, all of the space will be available to you to work. And you're going to get internet codes right after this session's over. Sunday and Monday are a chance for you to work and also office hours for you to come ask for help. Now, we have 2 sources for you to get help. If you're in person and want to get help in person, you can just show up to these office hours, and Sinchan and I will be just moving around most of the day tomorrow. Well, definitely tomorrow, but Sunday and Monday as well. Sunday, all day here. And Monday, I guess some of you from here have classes, but we'll do an office hours in person at IIT Delhi campus on the evening as well. So again, this is just showing you 2 office hours and a meal. And then Monday, there's an office hours 7 to 8 p.m. here at IIT Delhi for anyone who wants to come. It's a last-minute thing, so that if you're stuck on something before your submission's due at 11:59, we want to encourage you to get over that challenge at the last minute. So we're going to be doing that. The second source of help is Slack, which is actually the next slide, so let's go there. We have experts from Coinbase, product managers from the Toshi team that have been very kind to join our Slack channel. We've created a channel. Sinjin, can you hit the next button? Yeah, so when you go onto our Slack community, it's an open community with 700 members very actively participating right now. There's a hashtag hackathon is where most of the discussion is happening for hackathon right now. We've created questions Hyperledger for questions that will be answered by the IBM team. Again, the 2 members who will be leading the workshop tomorrow on Hyperledger will be a part of that. There's 1 or 2 members from the Coinbase Toshi team that are going to be online. These are the guys who build Toshi. They're going to be online to help you get around any Toshi bugs or any questions you have on Toshi. That's your second source, and they're going to set aside a few hours every day to answer questions. So they're on a different time zone from you. They may not be answering instantly, but you can feel free to ask them as well, or post on the general hackathon channel, and your classmates or your co-competitors might also help you out. All right, can you go back one? So guys, the bit.ly, the short link for joining Slack is bit.ly/join Proffer Slack. You can find this on our website as well. There's a giant button at the bottom that says join Slack. Next one, please. All right, Twitter. So throughout the workshops tomorrow, I want you guys to know that this is where you can tag Proffer. You can also share, you can use the hashtag Proffer Hackathon as you take photos and share the news with your friends, classmates, whatever you want to do. These are the hashtags to use. And as you leave today, feel free to start this process. Okay, and there's one more slide. So we really want to thank a lot of partners here. So Niti Aayog, I think a lot of them are outside, but you guys have been really helpful. So for those of you in here from the Niti team, a big thank you. Who's here from the Niti team still? We just want to thank you personally. Anybody? They're all outside probably, waiting for you guys to join them. But anyways, they've been really helpful in this. Like all the hard work of setting up the banners that you see is them, and obviously inviting a lot of the speakers as well. We'd like to thank our prize sponsors. So that's Microsoft, Accel, AWS, Toshi, and IBM. And of course, the infrastructure and media partners. That includes Uber and ZepPay, which are covering a lot of the meals. IIT Delhi's entrepreneurship cell. Are you guys here? eCell? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, and tell your friends we said thank you, your classmates, and your story as a media partner. So thanks to all of these partners, because without them, this wouldn't have been a success, and this has just started. So let's make this a good event. We are very excited to see what you guys build. We're here to help you. This is not an impossible field. You can get into it, and I think you're gonna like the kinds of problems you can solve with it, and we want to give you that time, space, and a little bit of a financial incentive to do that. All right, that's the purpose of the hackathon. So dinner time and internet time, so please go help yourselves. Thank you guys very much for day one. See you tomorrow at 12:30 for the first talk by the CEO of Aadhaar.